Hi everybody, this is Lonnie Bowling again, and if you saw my earlier video, you saw that I laid out a challenge to do a series of screencasts where we're going to work on getting Pi data to a mobile device via the cloud. So anyway, I'm really excited about doing this series, and I hope that everybody's going to follow along and do some coding along with me. And you know, I'm a believer that seeing and doing, that's the way to really learn this technology. And so that's what we're going to do is you'll actually get to see me doing this programming, doing programming on my computer, and have the sample files, and then you can work through it yourself. And hopefully that'll be a good way for you to start exploring this new technology and start thinking about all the things that you could do with it. I think this is super exciting stuff, so I'm really looking forward to getting started. So the first thing that we're going to do here today is to create the simple WCF service. This service is we want to set up to be able to access our Pi data, and specifically in this example series, I'm going to I want to get a range of data that we can use for trending. So the WCF service is something that we're going to dive into with this screencast, and also we're going to be talking about Azure a lot and talking about service buses on Azure. So we're going to do these first two items today, and so without going any more further into it, we'll get started. So I'm going to close out this, and I have a little bit of code in there written, ready to go. So let's go ahead and start up a Visual Studio project. I was actually debating whether to use Visual Studio 2012 on this, but I decided, let's go ahead and stay with 2010 and not throw too many new things at everybody, including myself. So maybe if I do this a second time or third time, I'll try it in Visual Studio 2012 because I'm pretty anxious to start using that. It looks pretty nice. All right, so I want to create a console application here, and this is going to be our connecting on-premise server here, and this is just going to be simple console application. I think in the future you'd want to convert this into a Windows service or something like that. This is going to be the main application that would run on a behind the firewalls type of situation on premise to access your Pi data. So before I actually get going on this, I want to jump over and talk a little bit about Azure, because with this application, some of the first things we need to do is get it set up so that we can connect to Azure and connect to an Azure service bus. So I'm going to come up here, and we'll go over to the Azure site, and this site has gone through a huge transition in the last year or so, and every time I visit it, it looks a little different. Matter of fact, I think it looks different from just last week even. So Microsoft's continuing to really develop and refine Azure, and so I think this is a great time to start getting involved if you haven't messed around with it at all. It's much simpler than it was even a year ago. So from here, you can sign up for a free trial, and that's a 90-day free trial. You have a bunch of resources right here that you can use to play around with, and also if you have an MSDN subscription, there's automatically an Azure account that for development and just learning about Azure. It comes along with your subscription. Depending on what level of subscription, these resources change. So I do have my Azure set up with my MSDN subscription, and that just gives me plenty of resources to try out and experiment and run things, and I can keep stuff up and running every day of the month if I want. And so anyway, sign up for the free trial if you haven't already. You'll need it to work through this example. And From there, you want to go into the develop area, and this develop area is also broken down into a bunch of different categories depending on the type of development you want to do. There's videos. They're always expanding more and more content. We're creating more and more content for the site, and these videos, I'm continuously monitoring this area to see what new videos have come out, see if this is something that, see if something came out that can help me. We're going to be working in the .NET area, so this is a really nice thing that they've done is they've just said, okay, if you're going to develop for .NET, you need to do an install. This is going to set up your computer for developing your Azure applications, and depending on what you're using, you can choose which you want to install. I've already installed my 2010, so we're not going to go through and do that again. But what that'll do is that'll get things like an emulator set up on your computer so that you can run that, and it'll also configure, bring in templates and stuff like that with your Visual Studio IDE, so you can create various cloud type of applications. So from here, over on the left, they have different scenarios of things that you might want to do and you might want to dive into, and then they also have how-to guides down here. And the guide that I'm going to be working off of to start us out is this service bus relay example. And I can click over there, and here you can see that they're explaining what a service bus is and going through. This is a pretty good example of how to get started, and it just has, it just walks you through a real simple, basic example. But actually, this is all we're going to need to get going. I did want to talk a little bit about what my approach is going to be. This graphic is really nice to demonstrate what we're going to be doing. So this is the console application that's going to be running on-premise. So this is, you can picture your Pi server next to it, and this is going to be feeding through the service bus relay connection out to some kind of an application. And in this case, we're just going to create another console application that's going to turn around and connect to the other end of the service bus, and we'll be able to test out our service connection and make calls back and forth. But that'll set us up for this cloud application part, where this web role is what we're going to be using in future videos to develop a REST API, and from there going out, we'll have a web-facing front end for mobile devices to be able to make calls all the way back to get to our WCF service and back to our Pi database. So this is the beginnings of our back end that we're going to develop for this series. Okay, so let's go ahead and come back to our console application, and I'm calling it PiConnect 2 because I already wrote PiConnect 1 as I ran through this the first time. And one of the first items of order that we need to do is we need to get our target framework changed to framework 4, and that's because we're using server references, and we need the full framework. I'm not sure exactly which references that aren't available, but there are a few things. There's something with the service bus that is not the service bus can't run on the client framework, so we have to have the server framework. That's one of the reasons, actually, one of the big reasons why getting this REST API set up is so important. We don't want to have dependencies like service bus, dependencies on, say, like an iOS application, because we're really in a completely different environment, different platform. We're not in Microsoft's environment anymore. If we're on a Kindle or an Amazon, Android device, same problem. So this really gets. We'll be using service bus, and Microsoft technology to connect to Azure from our on-premise Pi server, and we can I think we can get away with that because the Pi systems are typically going to be running on a Windows server of some sort. But But anyway, that's one of the reasons why we want to kind of, when we get to the client side, we don't want to have to depend on that type of server reference. So I'm going to bring in our service bus NuGet package. And so here, if you haven't used a package manager, this is a great way to get libraries and get the latest versions of whatever it is that you're working with. And so in this case, we're going to do Windows, Azure, Service Bus. And what that's going to do is to go out onto the NuGet site, and it's going to pull in the DLLs that we're going to need for this package, for this application. It'll get everything configured and set up. It'll configure the application to however we need it. And here we go. So it looks like we're still on 1.7 for Azure, which is what I've been working with so far, so that's good. And so what happened there is we brought in this reference for Service Bus, and I also think the system .service model came in, and it also did it modified our app config file, and it added these this binding information that we can use. There's various ways because Service Bus is using WCF, so there's various types of bindings that can be set up to attach to the Service Bus on either side. And this, all of these are not necessarily needed, but by being in this config file, they're available for us to use if we choose to. Okay. So we have the project ready to go to start working with. So I'm going to go ahead and start setting up a WCF service here, and I'm going to create a folder here, and then we want to create our first class. And when you create WCF services, it's pretty much standard convention to create your interface in one file, and then create your implementation in the other file. So we're going to go ahead and stick with that. I'm going to go ahead and call this IPy, for this is going to be our interface. We call this our service, and I'll go ahead and from here we want to this is going to be an interface, and switching back to our Echo example, I'm not doing it quite in the same order that they have it. We'll get to the Azure part here shortly, but here they're showing you how to lay out a how to lay out the interface properly for using the service bus. So I'll go ahead and start with that, so we don't have to type, or I don't have to type too much. We're going to go ahead. We do need that reference to our service model, and that's the service contract is the next item. So we want to create a service contract, and we want to give it a namespace, and let's just call this. We can call this anything we want. I'm going to call this iService. And then from there, make sure I'm missing that. See, good thing I don't have to type a lot here. All right, and get our case correct. All right, just getting warmed up. So here we have that, and then we're going to not copy. We'll just go, or not type. We'll just do that. We're going to create an operational contract, and in this case, I want to just I want to create a test call called version stream client ID. and I want to go ahead and here we want to put OSIsoft, and that is it for the contract. So, or for the interface. And what this version is, this is just going to be our test call. What I want to do is just pass it a string from the client, and then I want our service to return the version number. This is the area where we're going to put in some more functions that will eventually tie into our Pi system using the SDK. But I'm not going to jump into the SDK right now. I want to go ahead and get the service up and working and make sure that we're good on that front before we start trying to add to the complexity by diving into Pi. So the next thing I want to do is add a new class, and I'll do it the menu way here. And we want to go. We want to just call this our Pi service. And this is going to implement the Pi service interface that we created. And so we want to go ahead and implement our class string version, and what do we call this string client ID, right? Okay. Yeah, we haven't returned anything yet. Okay. So let's go ahead and write out. Well, let's set up our string results. Let's call this version, and this is just going to return the version number of our server side. And we could do more with this. We could actually look at the real version of the program. ID equals and this. Oops. Client ID, and here we'll go ahead and return the result. Okay, and we can try building that, and that looks like we're all set up. So pretty straightforward getting the service set up. And I did not mention down here this interface here for this. I don't want to call it problem solver. I want to call it Pi service channel. This is going to be used when we're creating channels and we're setting up our service bus connection. This interface. So we'll have to send it. We'll have to use this as part of our configuration, and you'll see how that plays in. So the next thing to do is to go ahead and actually get a service bus working here. And so we'll come back to our Azure website, and from here, once you have your trial set up, and you can see free trial right there, so go ahead and get it going. There's this portal. If I click on portal, it's going to take me to the Azure web portal. Now, we're at the time of this this video, the screencast. There actually are two portals. There's the classic Azure portal, which is a Silverlight application that you see in front of you here, and there's also a new preview portal. And so, depending on when you sign up, I'm not sure if it brings you in the preview portal or if it brings you to the old one, but eventually everything will be on the new portal. And I'll go ahead and switch over to that new portal just so you can see what that looks like. You can see here, at the very bottom screen, very bottom of the screen here in the center, it says Visit the Preview Portal. If I click on that, that'll bring us over to the new high-fidelity, rocking Azure portal, which I just absolutely love. This thing is beautiful. This is an HTML5 application, so and it's really, really nice. I really like what they've done with it. I haven't explored it all, but I'm just starting to use it, and so far it's super nice. But here they have all the different resources that you can use, and you can see I have a few things set up here, and this is just for me tinkering around. But this is a very, very nice area. And if you're in the new portal and you need to get back, you can click on this preview site and take me back to the previous portal, and that'll get you back to the old portal. And the reason that we need to do that is because the service bus stuff is actually over here in the older portal. So I'm going to go ahead and click on our service bus area here and go and look at the service buses that I already have created, and we'll create a new one. So what you're going to see is you'll just see your subscription up here, and there won't be any service buses located down here. And I'm going to create a new service bus, and I'm going to call this Pi Feed 2, and check availability. It's available. I'm going to set up that, and you can pick the data center that's closest to you. I'm out in California, so I'm going to go ahead in United States West and create that namespace. And so this will take just a few minutes. It's pretty fast. And once that's created, then we'll be able to bring in the credentials that we need. So as that's going on, I want to go back to my Azure site and go back to develop. Let's get back to our sample here. Here's the code that we're going to use to connect, or some of the code that we're going to use to connect to the service bus. And that is just going to come into our main program here. I'm just going to do a cut and paste and start with this code. Alright, so let's go ahead and resolve some of our references here. And I'm going to get our, so this brought in these two using statements. And of course, problem solver. This is the implementation, and here's the interface. So this is Pi service, and this is just Pi service. And let's go ahead and bring those in. And this is Pi service. And actually, this is setting up a local connection endpoint. And so this is just to talk a little bit about this code. This is creating what's called a service host, and the service host is going to create a connection to one end of our service bus, and it's going to host this connection, and then we can add endpoints to that connection, and then we can open it up, and then we'll have channels that we can use on the other side to communicate with this application. This here is for running locally if we want to connect to the service host directly from this computer, or let's say we're behind the firewall and we want to do that. We could do that if it's available, or in this case here, this is what's going to connect through the service bus. In this instance, I really don't care about this local one. We're not going to mess with that. This can be relevant if you get into what they call, with the service bus, you can get into what's called a hybrid connection, I do believe is what they call it. And what happens is the service bus will actually switch you over to this other endpoint and create a direct connection back to the service versus running through the service bus. Depending on the type of application you're writing, that might be of interest. In our case, because we're going to create a web service, that's going to be running up in Azure. We're not really ever going to do a local side connection. But if you're running behind a firewall and you have like line of business applications running directly on a service bus where your client is communicating back to your service through a service bus directly, then this could be very cool to play around with. This is just the service bus. There's a lot of features and functionality with it. A lot of different things that you can do with it. So, this is just one way of going about it. What I'm going to do here today. So let's go ahead and switch back, and we should have that feed should be set up here, ready to go. All right. So we've got feed 2, and all I need to do is get my credentials for this so we can connect to it. I'm going to default key, and I'm going to view that. Here's the owner. The default issuer is the owner. It always comes up that way, and you can create other issuers if you want through the access control part of Azure. But right now, we're just going to use that, and we're going to use that key. And let's come back to Visual Studio. So here, I need to set up the URL that we're going to use. This namespace is what we called our namespace, our Azure namespace, which was pi-v2. And this is going to be whatever we want to call this service bus. And I'm just going to call it service. And here's the secret token provider. And this is going to get us authenticated and give us a token so that we can actually use the service bus. The key is what I just copied, so we'll go ahead and put that key into there. And really, that's it. That'll open up and connect us to the service bus. Of course, we're not making any calls with our service yet, but this'll get the job done. There's one other thing that I want to add in here, just because I think it's pretty nice to have, and this is just from other examples I worked through. I'm going to copy this code over. I'm going to do a lot of this as I'm working through these examples, but I really don't want to have to type all this out. And what this is going to do for us is this is using the channel or the host that we just created, sh, and it's going to go ahead and it's going to look at the channels that have been created on using this host, and it's just going to get this channel dispatcher, and then it's going to loop through and look at the endpoint for that's associated with the dispatcher, and then we're going to print out the endpoint address. So we're just looping through, and we're just writing out what the address is. And this will just show us as we're running that what our service bus address looks like, and that just tells me that okay, we're really connected and everything looks good. So this is creating that connection, and all of this can also be done using from your config file. Over here, you can add in the config information, and if you look over on the example, they have they show you how to do that. Here's all the information that you would add in. You're adding your various connections and your token provider security information, and you can configure it that way too. It can be done either way. I think it's simpler for the example for us just to go through and do it this way, but maybe in a real production environment you might want to use the config files just for maintainability purposes. So there's our connection. The next thing that we want to do is actually, let's go ahead and test this to make sure that we're connecting to it. I'm going to go ahead and run, and we should see the connection get established, run through, and look at this endpoint address. And then the next step is to create our client application that we're going to connect to the other end of the service bus and make calls to that to our Pi service. And sometimes this takes a little bit of time to get the initial connection established, but it kind of depends on I think the complexity of your network that you're trying to get through. At home, I notice it takes me about twice as long as it does at work, and I don't really know why, but Anyway, there you go. We're listening at that service bus pi feed to servicebus.windows.net, and there's our service, and it's connected up. Okay, so step one done. The next thing I want to do is add a new project to our solution here, and we'll just call this our Pi Connect test client. And once again, I want to come in and I want to get onto the right target framework here. And then I want to bring in my service bus references, which I can come over here, change my target project to client. Okay, we've got that. And then let's go ahead and create a let's add a new folder. Service. And from there, let's add an existing item. And what I want to do is I just want to link to our interface service contract that we've created in the other project. And that way, if I update it on the server side, it'll automatically update on this test client application. I'll keep them in sync. So we're going to go ahead and here's our interface, and I'm just going to add this as a link. Okay, and so that brings it in as a link. And now we're all set up to be able to access this client. And I'm going to come over here to our main program, and we want to be able to call we want to be able to come back and call this host. And the host is based off of the Pi service and the Pi service contract. So it's expecting to be able to receive WCF service calls that are associated with this contract and this contract and the implementation here. And that's really what's going on. As I change these two items, the host doesn't. We don't have to do anything with the host. It'll just continue to allow us to access the new functions that are available. And so here we're back to the client, and we can come back to our example. And so here's the code that they're saying. Go ahead, and this is how you set up your channel or your connection in the channel to the service bus. So we'll go ahead and bring that in and set that up. So this first one is we're creating this channel factory, and this is going to be off of our iPi service, right? And we need to resolve that. PiConnect2.services. This is bringing in this is a namespace from our other project, because on here you can see here you can see that's the namespace. So I could even change this namespace if I wanted to, and not have it. I can have it whatever I wanted. So anyway, we're bringing that in. I want to bring in my service model stuff, and we want to create a. We're going to bring in the service bus. So these two guys, once again, similar to how the server side was. This is doing very similar things that we did on our server side service bus. Here's our endpoint address. Once again, we want to go ahead and we want to call this. This has to match what we have on our server. So this has to be Pi v2. And we call this service. And same thing with the token provider. So we can come over and grab this. Paste that in. And finally, I want to go ahead and I just want to call. Our function. So we've got a channel set up here, and remember this channel is set up based off of this IPy service. So we're saying from channel factory create us a new channel, and it's going to be this type. So everything's pretty straightforward from here. You can see that we have version. That's from our interface, and it's expecting a string. So I can say this is client ID. We'll say line testing. Give you my client ID, and that's going to return a string. So I want to go ahead and do a console, and we'll do a console write line here. Whoops, write line, and let's write that out. And so we'll keep it open so we can actually see what happened. Read line. Okay. So we've got these two guys out. Line there. Okay, so I think that we have our client set up, and we have our Azure Service Bus created, and if we did everything right, we should be able to see this work. So let's see if we can compile first of all. All right, everything's built. That's good. I'm going to go ahead and we have this started up as a default project, our server. So I'm going to go ahead and start that up, and we'll get that established so it'll be able to receive calls. Now remember, it'll be connected to Service Bus, and in there, in the implementation of that, which was this file here, we are going to build that string, and we're going to pass it back to the client. But I wanted to do, actually, let me stop, because I do want to do one thing right here. Is I want to come in and I also want to write this out in my console. I want to write this out here. I'm just having this console. Sorry, I'm having a tough time typing today. Probably a little nervous. Okay, so we've got a console write line, and I just want to write out the results. That's all I want to do, just so that we can see this. This will write it on in the client window, in the server window, so we can see that the server received the request. We'll see it come here. So here's our server window, and our console application. So we'll see this connect, and then we'll be able to make our call. Okay, so we're connected here, and now I'm going to fire up my, I just right-clicked here, and I'm going to start this client application as a new instance. Now remember, once we start it, coming over here, we're going to create this connection. We're going to create the connection, and then we're going to call that version right away, and we're going to write the results of what's returned, and then we're just going to wait. So we should see that call happen. We should see it coming through. So we have our server up here, and I'll go ahead and so we can see that we can actually see that up here, ready to go. And I'll start this off, and go ahead and we can see when it connects, it'll make that call. We should see it printed out in both boxes. So let's see, when endpoint was not found. Pi feed service bus to ensure so you connect with it. Okay, so let's see, we said pi feed to service, name not registered. Okay, so I probably just had a typo in here. So here you can see it says SEVICE, and I left out an R. So this is the beauty of doing a live demo, is that sometimes you really make mistakes and you have to debug them. So that's okay. we'll just put in our R here, and then we'll try it again. So that's one of the reasons why I liked to print out what my actual address is looking like, because I've had those types of problems happen in the past, and it can kind of drive you crazy. You're trying to figure out why you're not connecting up to your service bus correctly, or and especially if your service is deployed to Azure and you're trying to debug that. So those little utilities or tricks help you out. So there, it looks like the address looks correct now, and we'll try it again. The moment of truth. See if the second try I can do it. So we'll go ahead and start that up, and see what happens. Okay, beautiful. So awesome. Check that out. So here you can see version 1.00 client ID allowing testing, and then it returned that string back to the client. So there you go. We successfully set up a Azure Service Bus connection from our client to a client test application. So the next step is going to be to start converting this over to some SDK calls so that we can get some Pi data. So instead of passing client ID, we'll pass it something like a Pi tag and maybe a range or something like that, and then we'll return the data. And so, once we have those functions, we're just going to add those into our interface that we have set up, and we can test them through this client application. We're all set up to do that. It'll be pretty straightforward. And once we have that working, then the next step is going to be to continue to explore Azure and start working on this web API, this RESTful service using a web service. So anyway, that concludes this segment. I hope that you'll stay tuned and continue to watch as the story unfolds. But eventually, we will get data to these mobile devices, and this is the first building block in this application. My name is Lonnie Bowling, and thank you once again very much for watching, and I look forward to our next meeting and continue to evolve this project. Have a good evening or day, depending on what time it is where you are. Bye-bye.